Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the latest decision by the Karnataka Indian state in the courts that have held that the students not be allowed to wear the headscarves until the petitions on whether headscarves are going to be banned or not are pending. We'll be talking about the ramifications of such a huge decision as far as freedom of religion is concerned, as far as treatment of minorities in India is concerned, as far as the politics of BJP is concerned, all of that. In the later part of the show, we'll also be talking about the Pakistan Electronic Crimes Act, amendments to that the government has added, and they're clamping down on fake news, their attempt to prevent lies that Farokh Nazim talked about. He talked about the fact that lies cannot be allowed to become the foundation of society. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Nasir Ali Khan, who is a former ambassador. Thank you so much for being with us. And Farzana Bari, who is a human rights activist. Thank you for joining us today to talk about, as far as India is concerned, the state of affairs there. Ambassador, overall, we've seen that the latest situation in India has been picking up for a while. You know, the prohibition on hijab also, and now this latest decision by the courts, also the treatment of minorities, is a cause of concern. We've seen protests all over. As far as the politics of BJP is concerned, you know, Modi's India has been going towards this for a while. We saw what happened in Kashmir, we saw, and now, you know, the spillover effect of that in India itself. How do you see things overall at this time?
I think it's very unfortunate, but the basic reasoning, in my opinion, behind it is the Modi's government's intentions to kind of drive a wedge within society.
Okay.
And in many ways, it is also to distract from its own performance in not being able to provide the basic facilities and actually deliver on the promises that it made. Instead of talking about the differences between the rich and the poor, the ever expanding this thing and the lack of facilities for the poor, they have decided to divide India into groups based on religion, primarily to unite the Hindus, whether they are well off or not, to give them a sense of pride in being a Hindu, and as a result dividing people up into different religions.
So you're saying that it's basically to detract from their own performance in terms of economy, in terms of how India is faring overall.
And basic services that they were unable to.
And we've seen, as far as COVID is concerned also,
Absolutely,
they haven't, you know,
absolutely.
they've been failing dismally
Yes.
to control the disease itself, the spread of it, and there's been so much suffrage resulting from that also.
Yes. So
right.
primarily, and this seems to work to some extent, and even now Karnataka, which is one of the 5 southern states, is the only state with a BJP government, and with the elections coming up in 2024, they are now looking towards a population of students which will be eligible to vote in 2024. So they are creating these rifts among the students.
So basically for their political mileage or whatever we may.
Absolutely.
Let me come back to you. Farzana, I hope that you've been following. We've been talking about the fact that, of course, as far as Modi is concerned, this can, I mean, rather than looking at the overall picture as far as India is concerned, the BJP seems to be focusing more on how it's going to benefit them in the 2024 elections. And the fact that, you know, this is, of course, going to divide India doesn't seem to mean so much. The fact that the image of India as secular India, you know, which was what it was to the world, has certainly taken, you know, a damping, so to speak. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, I do, because I think this kind of market-oriented democracy, the fundamentally, you know, the ruling class or the business interests, they are not interested, you know, that how the society get divided, what will be the social ramification for such kind of, you know, inciting that kind of a divide and rule kind of policies. And I think certainly India is heading towards, creating this divide. And since Muslims are not a small minority in India, India will change, because of this right-wing, onslaught and this Hindu nationalism and the way they behave so fanatically. I think it will really weaken the very basis of.
How do you think the world is looking at what's happening at this time? Because certainly, with regard to Kashmir, there was, of course, this clamping down on social media, a complete ban on it, not even clamping down, trying to prevent, the information going out, misinformation, propaganda being sent out. But, the way that things are happening at this time, at this age, it's very difficult to prevent that kind of spread of information. So the world is watching what's happening as far as India at this time is concerned.
The world, unfortunately, the world that matters, they are not bothered. Again, as I said, in this global capital, the world is more concerned that India is a bigger economy and they don't care. Like America has been violating human rights, right, left, and center. Similarly, India has been violating human rights. It's even using pellet guns and whatnot, and mass murders and mass rapes and all that. But as you know, that there is hardly any hue and cry at the forum of UN. Okay, there is once or twice European Union has given some statement, but if you look at the role of UN, where the world is basically, has the representation, nobody cares, So unfortunately, we are living it now in an age, where those forces which are actually at the helm of affairs, they are more interested in their, business and their economic interest, and they don't care what is happening to our ecology, what is happening to humanity, what is happening to life on our planet.
Come back to you. I'll just come back to you. Ambassador, do you think it's true? The kind of the remarks that Farzana Sahib was making, she's saying that nobody cares. Do you think it's true? Nobody cares. And of course, as far as India is concerned, it's true that they're a huge economy. It's true that for the world, it's about exploiting that market. It's more about their geostrategic position. It's more about the fact that where their interests lie. But are we? Is the position really so jaded? You think that the world will not care? Because in terms of how volatile the situation can get, in terms of how it can divide India, in terms of what it can mean for the region potentially, do you think all of those factors are not going to matter?
To some extent, the fact that India is a huge market and it has a very, very large middle class with this tremendous buying power,
right.
That is certainly attractive to anybody who potentially wants to export there. But as far as investment is concerned, many analysts have expressed the view, like for instance, in the case of Karnataka, the capital of Karnataka is Bengaluru.
Right.
Bengaluru has enjoyed a tremendous prosperity over the last 30 or 40 years and is a favored destination for investors. Now, many analysts have expressed the fact that if under these conditions in Karnataka, the atmosphere is vitiated, it's certainly going to prevent people from coming to invest there.
Okay.
That's one point. The other point, of course, is that all of this is a short-term view, in my opinion, that the government is taking, the BJP government, for its short-term gains.
Right.
Overall, you will notice that the very rich have supported the BJP throughout this period. Now, because there are many rich people in Bengaluru, they may have supported the government locally, apart from the fact that traditionally the coastal region of Karnataka has this Hindutva philosophy or ideology well ingrained as well. That's the reason they won the state. But in my opinion, the reputation of India as a whole has certainly suffered, especially in Europe and to a large extent in America.
And what about tourism, to which India relies to a large extent? You know, it is of course known as secular India. It is of course, you know, to attract that kind of tourism, to attract religious freedom is one of those tenets of, having that kind of economy or that kind of money flow in. Farzana, would you agree with that? I mean, of course, for the world to close its eyes for its own gains is one thing, but for, for there to be an effect even on the economy, even on trade, even on investment, all of those things, is it, do you think, a short-term gain for which India doesn't seem to look at where it's going in the long term?
Yes, I think absolutely there is a political expediency right now. Modi government is not bothered, you know, how it's going to impact, in fact, not only Indians' economy, but also the social cohesion of the society as well. As I said earlier, that Muslims are not small minority, and it's not only they are against Muslim, but also Christians and other minorities like Sikhs and all that. They are also, feeling the heat of that kind of nationalism, that kind of fanaticism which is being promoted. But you know, when it's the world
minority, I mean, of course, it's a minority when we talk about Muslims, but this is a huge minority. And it's not just Muslims, because we've seen what's happening even across the board to other minorities also. When we talk about Christians, we talk about Sikhs, it's not just limited now to Muslims. Of course, this ban, at this time, yes. But other than that, all over, the minorities are suffering in India.
That's right. This is exactly what I said, But however, going back to my earlier point when you asked me this question, whether the world cared, and I said world don't care, when I say that, then it is basically, if you look at practically, if you look at the way the representative of various countries, sit in the in UN, they are. Nothing substantive has come out. They have not condemned India, the kind of violation India is committing, there aren't any strong voices there. However, of course, as far as the human rights community, in the world is concerned, I think people are then looking to, obviously they have their views on that, and they are not, everybody is getting aware that India is exposing, its so-called secularism, and what they claim that they have a democracy and the largest democracy in the world with this kind of a secular, the state has adopted this secularism is a secular state. And I think they are badly exposing themselves. So in that way, yes, India is earning a very bad name as for social human rights community is concerned. But I think as far those forums are concerned, where decisions, in the sense that where countries can hold each other accountable, because there are international conventions, which in various countries, where the world community has signed, and India is clearly violating those international convention and covenant, and then nobody is holding them accountable. So I think in that context, I say yes, world don't care. So when I say world don't care, then of course the nation states which are representing their people, in the forum of UN.
Right, let me come back to you. Ji, Nasir Sahab, would you agree as what Farzana Sahib was saying? She's saying that, international, of course, human rights, it is a violation of human rights. It's being covered all over. That is true. But when we say that international organizations, for them to pick it up, for this to become a real issue, that is severely lacking. I mean, one can't argue with that. We haven't seen it come out on international forums. That's also a fact.
To some extent. And I must mention the U.S. ambassador at large for international religious freedom has certainly said that it will stigmatize women, it will
marginalize and
women.
stigmatize. Yes.
So that is one voice that is there to support. But let me just come back to secularism. Secularism is not just one type. Okay. Secularism that started in Europe, for instance. It basically was trying to separate religion from state.
Right.
The secularism in India, which was mainly proposed by Mahatma Gandhi, was slightly different in the sense that he did not say the same thing.
Okay.
He wanted cohesiveness in India, And so his secularism meant primarily the freedom to practice your religion, no matter what religion you are. So that's a slight difference. And in the Indian Constitution, there is the right to religious freedom, there is the right to education, as far as this case of Karnataka.
But when we look at that, when we talk about the Indian Constitution, like you're saying, and of course, you know, it grants freedom of religion, then how do you look at this decision in Karnataka in view of course, I mean, it's still
Unfortunately, the decision has not come yet, but what the court, the High Court
but the
in
interim
Karnataka,
ban.
Yes, but even apart from the ban, what the court in Karnataka is considering, unfortunately, is whether the hijab is part of the fundamental Islamic faith. Now you see, this is something, there are many voices within India, even Muslim voices, who have simply said that there is no mention in the Quran of the hijab. There is mention that women should be attired decently and modestly, but there is no specific. However, there is culture, there are traditions, and then more importantly, there are many different sects and different schools of thought in Islam.
Within
so
Islam,
on what basis will that High Court decide this?
Right, let me come back to you. Farzana, why should it matter? I mean, when we talk about the fact that, you know, of course, one of the considerations, Ambassador Saab is very right. I mean, he pertinently mentions, and I think I was going to go to that, that whether it is a tenet of Islam or not, whether hijab is, you know, a particular tenet of Islam or not, or, you know, to rule on this. Do you think that it's even something that should be debated? Because it's about freedom, essentially. It's about freedom of religion it's about for the person, individual person to choose, right? That is what secularism should mean.
Absolutely. I think it's none of the business of the court to decide, you know, whether this is in Islam or this is not in Islam. I think it is simply the matter of, you already said that, you know, and you said that very well, that it is simply a matter of choice, you know. These are civil rights. People can decide how they want to dress up, whatever they wear, and whether it is, if that symbolizes religion or not. Like, for example, Sikh always wear that turban, or so for me, it's irrespective of whether those symbols are, you know, the symbols of people's religiosity. It's simply the matter of personal choice, you know. And people are
debating, I mean, even in Islamic societies themselves, even in countries where Islam is not a minority, Islam is, you know, where secularism, so to speak, is not, you know, so much in Islamic countries, so to speak. Even there, whether hijab is a part and, you know, a complete, how do I phrase it, if it's an essential part of Islam or not, whether covering your head is part of Islam or not, whether dressing modestly is part of Islam or not, are still things that, you know, they're grappling with, right?
Exactly.
It's not something that's settled in any part of the world. Wouldn't you agree?
I would, and you see, there have been countries like Turkey who have prevented girls from wearing even head covering in universities.
It was an issue in France also, I think.
France is, it is slightly different. You see, the difference, I'm not trying to defend France's decision in any way, but there is a critical difference. You see, there is a difference between a hijab and a niqab. Now, when France banned the niqab, it also banned balaclava, helmets, masks and helmets and things like that. So after 9/11, you can say to some extent they were concerned that if you can't tell the identity of a person, it may be a security risk. So like a man could be dressed in a niqab and get away with some things. That's slightly different. Although last year they have gone a bit further, and the Senate has discussed that, you know, wearing of hijab also in universities and things, unfortunately. But as I said, this is not the essential issue in Karnataka. The essential thing is...
Do you think that the heart of it is the politics?
Absolutely, there is no doubt. You see, the job of a government is to provide unity, cohesiveness, harmony in society. And this is clearly something that is based
the society.
on, and it is based on hatred. It is not based on any other principle. This is to divide religions and to promote the hate of a certain community. 13% of India, more than 13% of India consists of Muslims. That means if there are 8 people standing there, 1 person is a Muslim. Can you imagine that? And how detrimental this can be in fragmenting, polarizing society and creating frustration, and as a result, all kinds of terror acts can take place.
And Farzana, also an important consideration in all this is that where does the buck stop? Because, you know, an interesting discussion that we had earlier on was also about the fact that when Kashmir was concerned, as far as treatment of Muslims in Kashmir was concerned, you know, the ban of it, the banning of it coming out on social media, all of those things. And then, you know, because the world didn't react, because the world chose to keep silent, we are seeing the kind of spillover effect now within India. You know, as far as treatment of Muslims are concerned, now we're talking about freedom of religion, we're talking about preventing people, you know, the freedom. Who is to say that it's going to stop at this? You know, it could tomorrow mean not allowing them to go to mosques. It could mean a lot of things. You know, this could be just a stepping stone. One hopes that it's not, but we don't know where it will stop for the BJP.
I think that's why people are, you know, fighting, you know, for their right, because they know that once, you know, if they won't stop till here, you know, then there is no limit. And personally, you know, what has been said earlier, I think whether in the name of security and all that, the people's, you know, individual personal rights have been sort of, you know, there's a justification because there are threats, so people should not cover their face and all that. I think yes, I just want to say that yes, when in certain professions, you know, you might need people, you know, they have to uncover their face. But if people are in their personal lives and their social lives, if they want to cover their face, you know, because I do have problem, you know, in the West when they were trying to ban this, you know, parda and hijab and all that. So I think it's the same. So what you are asking me in terms of where the buck will stop, I think the way, and I agree with the earlier analysis of your other speaker, that because the way in the whole world, not only in India, because there are so many disparities, there's so many inequalities, you know, there's so much concentration of wealth and resources, that now this is the one way of distracting people by creating this kind of a polarization in society. The identity politics is the new way of actually endangering social cohesion in the society. So the people who are actually suffering from poverty and alienation, that you just avert their intention and you know, towards non-issues. And you see that even if this is happening in the West, you know, that the capitalist system is now failing.
Thank you so much for being with us. Nasir Ali Khan Sahab, thank you for joining us on this very important topic. Farzana Bari, thank you for being with us on the issue of hijab ban and extremism, minorities, treatment of minorities in India. We'll be back after a short break to discuss the Pakistan Electronic Crimes Act. Thank you so much for being with us. Right, welcome back. We want to talk about basically the Pakistan Electronic Crimes Act and of course the amendments to the act, which now are being, as far as the government is concerned, it's about the fact that lies, they've said that they want lies to become the foundation of a society. When Farooq Naseem was talking about, he talked about the spread of, you know, being used, these lies being used by foreign powers to fuel propaganda, to be used to target different individuals. With the aim to prevent this, the government has come up with this amendment, the amendment to the ordinance, and it aims to clamp down on this kind of defamation, this kind of onslaught which we've also seen examples of recently. We want to talk about how, as far as individuals are concerned, there is also a lot of criticism on it, but we want to talk about what it actually aims to do and whether it's actually going to achieve all that the government has proposed that it will do. I have with me Barrister Safiullah Ghori, who is a legal expert. Thank you for joining me today, and also Barrister Asad Rahim Khan. Thank you for being with us today. Safiullah, how do you see the fact that, first of all, do you think it's an issue?
Well, yes, Marukh, there is absolutely no doubt about the fact that fake news is a global issue. Like even right now, as I am seeing this building up war between Russia and Ukraine, we see two completely different narratives. If you were to look at the Russian narrative, they would portray a completely different set of facts. And if you were to look at the US narrative, once again, a completely different set of facts.
What about locally? Don't you feel that in terms of how our politics is targeted, we've seen across the board, we did see today, tweets by, Maryam Nawaz, and she came out and she lashed at the government, but at the same time, a few days ago, she admitted that as far as the issue itself is concerned, it does remain an issue. When you talk about important individuals, you talk about political personalities across the board.
Right.
We've seen it,
Yes, of course.
And it's not just
Pakistan,
limited to one political
absolutely.
party, but it's happened to individuals across the board.
Every single person in Pakistan has been through their fair share of slander, slander that has led to fictitious cases against them that they have suffered for decades, and at the end been proven to be innocent. We have a huge
foundationless
cases.
stuff.
So we have a
come
huge
up.
history of false rumors that have been propagated against people that have destroyed lives.
Video tempering, so to speak, talking about
anything, audio files that we have seen. This is commonplace, and I completely understand that there is a need for this. However, the proposition by the government is something that I am still a bit perplexed by. I say this because I myself am a legal practitioner and I see a lot of these cases in the FIA courts. A lot of disinformation and a lot of fake news that is taking place over social media, and the new ordinance also states now that these kind of cases need to be wrapped up within 6 months, and they need to give monthly reports to the High Court. However, this is just a personal experience, having been attending courts regularly. I feel that as a millennial, the judges who are from an older generation have absolutely no understanding of how social media networks work, what they are, and a lot of things that are taking place now are taking place on increasingly newer social media channels like Snapchat, like Instagram. These are channels that maybe the judges haven't even seen, because I've seen cases in which and terrible cases. I regret to say this, but I've recently just seen a case of child pornography.
When we talk about, like, for example, YouTube was an issue. I want to go to Asad and then I'll come back to you. Asad, we've been talking about the fact that, whether this is really an issue in Pakistani politics. Would you agree with that? Because, recently we've seen a lot of instances crop up where, there's been video tempering. As far as reputation is concerned, of course, that's the easiest target. And we've seen politicians targeted, whether those allegations can be proved or not, whether the fact that let's go to court doesn't seem to resonate at all in society. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Thank you so much for having me, Marukh. I agree. Fake news is a very serious problem. But the way the government proposes to deal with it is to bring out a draconian set of laws and make them more draconian. So the essential reform is that we are going to make a 3-year offense into a 5-year offense, make it non-bailable, and make it cognizable. Now, after a certain point, public figures also have to understand that they need a slightly thicker skin. And I agree with what Barrister Safiullah said, that there is also a generational divide. As legal practitioners, we go into courts that are completely overburdened by frivolous litigation. And if you're going to widen the ambit and now pull in all sorts of social media posts that, number one, are barely understood, and number two, might be part of a larger concerted malicious campaign for which there are existing defamation laws already. and then are going to just overburden the docket some more. I think this is
But
a...
Asad, let me interject 1 second. Do you think that those laws at this time, do you think that those libel laws at this time, those slander laws at this time are effective at all? You know, even to have the kind of deterrence effect that we need. And you know, when you talk about expertise, what happened as far as the YouTube case was concerned, you know, if you recall when YouTube was banned, and of course, you know, the learned judges who heard that case. Of course, there are times that there is help needed in court, where you know you need the amicus to educate the judiciary as far as, you know, the technicalities of social media is concerned. That is there, and you know, but barring that, do you feel the laws at this time are having a sufficient deterrent effect at all? In preventing these kind of malicious things from happening? I mean, these are destroying complete social, you know, families are destroyed every day when we talk about, yes, we are critical of politicians, yes, we are critical of media personalities, but even these people have lives, these people have families. And, you know, just at the flick of a button, we see the kind of malicious rumors, the kind of malicious video tempering that's coming out, that's destroying careers. That also, unfortunately, remains a reality, right?
That is completely a reality. I just don't understand why, when we do have an existing set of defamation laws, why the answer is to say, let's make all of these laws 10 times more draconian. So the answer that these laws are not effective, that is something that pertains to the entire judicial system. The idea is to be able to lessen litigation, cut out appellate fora, expedite cases, and ensure that they have adequate prosecution, sensitive judges, and lawyers who aren't going to take date after date and delay after delay. This is not a conceit that is limited to defamation. It is a conceit limited to all offenses in the Pakistan Penal Code. The reflex can't be that we have to double the punishment, make it non-bailable, and make it cognizable. And as far as YouTube is concerned, that was perhaps the single achievement of the Raja Pervez Ashraf government, and it ended in disaster. We do not ban books all by themselves because there are 1 or 2 books that...
Right, I agree with that. I agree with that. I was talking about the technical expertise. I'll come back to you. I'm going to go to Barrister Saif. Barrister Saab, there's a lot of criticism on this ordinance. They're saying that it's draconian. They're saying that it aims to deal with, you know, it aims to clamp on freedom of speech, all of those things. How would you answer that?
Well, I believe that every type of defamation, libel, and slander is always criticized on the grounds of curtailing the freedom of expression. It's a very old historical argument that the proponents of freedom of expression usually, you know, present in order to defend the true freedom of speech. But there is always a difference between freedom of speech and slandering and insulting other people. That thin line must be respected, but usually whenever there is an argument, they always raise the freedom of expression argument in order to justify probably everything and, you know, all sorts of things against a person, which in fact is ironical and it's unfortunate. So secondly, the issue is that yes, Pakistan has defamation laws, but those defamation laws have been rendered absolutely ineffective. And I would definitely say that, and I have no hesitation in commenting that it's the judicial system which is not taking these issues seriously. However, the government cannot force judiciary to you know, award punishment or sentences and take stringent action or strong action. But all it can do is increase the cost for those people who intentionally defame others. And that one way of doing that is to you know, incorporate punitive sanctions, which are quite strict and in a way what you call it, you know, can prevent such occurrences. Now, the issue is that this law, especially in the context of social media channels, has become a necessity because in Pakistan it has ruined lives of people. People have committed suicide because of defamatory material being posted against them on social media sites. And nobody seems to be taking any action. And whenever the government tries to take an action, any action, it is always objected to on the grounds of freedom of expression. So I believe that we have no other option but to make punishable, to increase punishment, to make it more
Do
punitive.
you think the increase in punishment is also, of course, I mean, one of the things that the government wants to target is the deterrence effect of it, that once it becomes actionable, once it becomes, people know that this is what is going to happen to them, they will perhaps be careful, you know, when they video temper, when they do this kind of malicious content is spread out all over the internet. You know, fake faces are attributed to different people, and that kind of content is floated. When there is some kind of you know, accountability to that, then there will be perhaps you know, people will be careful, and the fabric of society generally, you know, perhaps we will see a change overall. Is that what the government aims to do?
That is exactly the philosophy behind enacting these strict measures and incorporating them into the law. But at the same time, I mean, I would you know, also like to comment that yes, Pakistan has a lot of laws which has provided for death penalty and very strict sentences, like in the context of narcotics and terrorism, but that does not stop people committing those offenses. But the nature of those offenses is comparatively different as opposed to social media defamation, because I mean it's directly injury to people's honor, insulting them, and creating a social problem for them. And therefore, I believe that increasing the bar for those who violate the social media norms is the only way out. But now it is.
And once it's out, once that content is out, once that video is out, once that you know, whatever is being circulated, it's you know, the damage is done, and that is also one of the considerations, of course, when you talk about libel or slander. But for us to make those laws stronger, for us to make sure that, you know, there is accountability, even under those laws, we talk about across the board reform. So then it becomes a circular argument, right?
It does, but you see, what we need to do is that we need to consider the roles of the legislature and the judiciary. Government has presented this law to the legislative fora, where it will be, you know, considered, and it has become the law. But now it is for the judiciary. The second phase of this is that the judiciary must be sensitized towards defamation on social media sites and then implement these laws. Now, insofar as the government is concerned, it has done its bit. It has performed its obligation by enacting the laws. But now it is for the judiciary to take up their own responsibility and take strict action, like any other civilized country in the world. I'll just give you the example of United Kingdom. They take defamation very seriously and impose heavy fines and even incarcerate people. So therefore, because the only reason is that they take it seriously and they don't want to, you know, people to mess around with people's honor and integrity on the basis of just ill-founded and baseless accusations and allegations. So I think that now the ball is in the court of the judiciary to take it seriously and to actually punish those people who are found to be involved in such offenses.
Besta, one last question. I'm running out of time, but as far as technical limitations are concerned, which is one of the issues raised by both the barristers on the show today, as far as the judges are concerned, that's also a consideration. So do you think there are going to be some, you know, of course, because you're saying that the ball is essentially now in judiciary's court, will there be any kind of measures to, you know, perhaps, I mean, how do we make sure that the judges are cognizant of the changing social media, you know, the technical expertise, all of that?
Yes, well, that is, as I said, it's like the most important factor in the implementation of this legislation is the attitude of judiciary and their willingness to implement it in letter and spirit. Problem with judiciary all over the world is that it has this inherent attitude of conservatism. It's usually conservative in you know, in many respects. And they need to be, the judges need to be sensitized, need to be educated on the new requirements and the fact or the philosophy behind the enactment of new legislation like this one. I believe that once they are sensitized, then they do implement it, and we need to just involve all the relevant stakeholders, like the non-governmental organizations who are involved in this field, and also the judicial academies, judicial Ministry of Justice must interact with them and must, in a way, enlighten them, inform them of the need for such stringent measures, and also, sensitize them. It's basically all over the world. This is the only way to improve the functioning of judiciary, and I believe that.
Thank you so much for joining us, Barrister Saif. Thank you for being with us. Safiullah, your quick comments in terms of the fact that, of course, as far as technical expertise is concerned, Barrister Saif also agrees with that. But in terms of the deterrence is concerned, do you think that alone, this law will serve perhaps to increase that factor at all?
It's very difficult to say how this law would be used now coming up in the future. I believe that if this law were to be used, for instance, to quell the fifth generation war against us when it comes to misinformation from India and for the purposes of national security, great. If it's used to protect the honor of women when it's being misused against them, they're being blackmailed and harassed, great. But if it's being used as a political tool to subvert the opposition, which it very well could be, then obviously this becomes a double-edged sword. And that's what we have to watch out when we are making all these laws. We have to ensure that they have in them the correct legislative intent so that they can be used in a manner that is beneficial to the country rather than used for garnering more power for any one political party. And that's, I think, what everybody is most afraid of when it comes to this law. I do welcome the idea of the fact that we are now thinking about misinformation and fake news, which is also something that needs to be addressed.
Right. I want to go to Asad. Asad, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but do you feel overall that, of course, today's opposition, maybe, tomorrow's government, today's government, maybe tomorrow's opposition, all of that, but do you think that across the board political culture can change? If there is a sufficient deterrence effect to this, if we just talk about the political damage, damage to the political personalities, for example, also, what across the board propaganda, when we across the border propaganda is concerned, as far as India is concerned, as far as other nations are concerned, the spread of misinformation there also.
That's a great question, Marukh. We are, of course, in the grips of concerted campaigns of disinformation, and we need to vigilantly watch out against them. My only issue is that this existing law only ratchets up our previous laws. And so if your mechanism is inherently flawed for dispensing justice, I don't understand what actually increasing the quantum of punishment is going to accomplish. Should the culture change? Absolutely. Absolutely it should. But the main apprehension pertaining to this is you need to also bring in stakeholders from other political parties who feel as affected by fake news. This was pushed through via presidential ordinance. It was triggered by events that happened over the past 2 weeks. This does not create an atmosphere for concerted reform, and I fear that not much will change as a result of this law.
Right. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us, Barrister Safiullah Ghauri, Barrister Asad Rahim. Thank you for joining us. Barrister Saif, thank you for being with us. As far as the issue of fake news is concerned, certainly we need across the board clamping down, and I think everyone can agree that, as far as not only recent events, but we've seen across the board a culture develop where victimization, where brutally maligning each other, whatever across the board political parties there may be, political personalities across the board from whichever political parties, social fabric, families being destroyed as a result of misinformation being spread, as a result of video tampering, as a result of completely wrong, inaccurate information being spread, if and only if this ordinance can somehow clamp down on that, can somehow discourage that culture, can somehow bring it to the notice of the individuals trying to perpetuate that kind of sleaziness, that alone will be a huge achievement. And let's hope that it can do that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.